tarot friends, Justin Michael, welcome back to my channel, and of course welcome if this is your first time visiting. I appreciate you stopping by as always. In this video, it's sort of a continuation of my historic card series. We're going to look at the Cary-Yale Visconti, otherwise known as the Visconti Di Modrone, which is one of three hand-painted decks from the 15th century that are sort of affiliated with the Visconti family. The Visconti family ruled Milan, I believe, from like the 1200s until the middle of the 1400s, like 1450 something, when Francesco Sforza took over. So Duke Filippo Maria Visconti was the ruler, I think, in the early part of the 1400s to like 1450. When he passed away, his son-in-law, Francesco Sforza, took over. Francesco married the Duke's daughter, Bianca, and then their son, of course, took over. I believe his name was Galeazzo. Sorry, that was... so Galeazzo took over eventually, and I think that was like in the 1470s when Galeazzo took over. So there's this kind of history here attached to this. The Visconti family ruled Milan, and there were three decks that were produced that were sort of affiliated with the Visconti/Sforza ruling family of Milan. This is the first of the three, probably the earliest, according to my sources. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of things here that are not consensus. Not everybody agrees on these things. I'm very happy to hear from you if you have another opinion. Please feel free to leave that comment below. I don't presume to know everything. I'm getting this information from actual historians, people I know who are doing the work, and are far above my pay grade. I'm just an enthusiast and I'm going by what I learned. I'm always happy for somebody to offer an alternative opinion. I'll even pin the comment a lot of times if it's really helpful. But for some reason in tarot, especially Tarot de Marseille, I've experienced this a lot. There's this idea if somebody disagrees with you about a certain fact or detail that, they take offense to it and they want to insult you and kind of make you feel stupid. And, that's very immature for one, and two, it's just not the way this stuff works. Like, the best historians in tarot were wrong about a lot of things. I assume that I'm wrong about a lot of things, and this is just kind of sharing what we know about this and kind of slowly moving out of error. So I encourage you to participate in the discussion. Leave a comment below if you have an alternative opinion, but just be respectful. That's all I ask. You know what I mean? Because I come to you with respect. I don't mean offense to anybody. I will leave my sources below, any additional information below, so for further reading, and the sake of clarity. And so this deck is the most interesting to me out of the three. The reason that is because it's a non-standard deck. For one, there are female and male counterparts to knights and pages. So instead of 4 court cards, you have 6. So you have 2 knights, 1 male, 1 female, and then you have 2 pages, a male and female, and then you have a king and a queen. So that makes 6 court cards. So it's 24 total. And then you also have 3 virtues, which were in addition, presumably in addition to the trumps, although not everybody agrees on that. And it's going to be sort of reflected in these 2 decks because they're vastly different decks in a lot of ways. The main reason is that they're different because most of the trumps are missing from this deck. We have almost all of the numerical pips, except for I think the 3 of Pentacles. There's a few missing core cards here and there, but the trumps, there's like almost every trump is missing aside from a few, and comparing these two, you'll see it. But in addition to that, there are 3 virtues, faith, hope, and charity, that are in this deck. And that's what makes it really kind of different. And I think Michael Dummett held this deck as a pre-standardized version of tarot. Like, in other words, he thought it was so early that it predated standardized tarot, like the tarot that we know today. But there's some interesting theories about that now. And Ross Caldwell, who is a friend of mine, he runs the Tarot History Group. He's also authored some books. He has a really interesting theory, and it makes a lot of sense. And he wrote a review of it, a short Facebook review of these 2 decks. Actually, I think he did 3 decks. He included the Il Mini Yellow deck as well. I'm going to leave that below. I'm going to probably cut and paste that below. It's really interesting. And a lot of the information I'm sharing, I'm getting from Ross, whose opinion I really respect and admire. In 1984, Kaplan decided to do a facsimile of the Cary-Yale Visconti. It was the first attempt, and this is it. Before that, I think the deck was printed in black and white, but never a facsimile and never a full deck. This version is a really nice quality version. Typical US game is a very sturdy box that kind of opens like this. The booklet it comes with is phenomenal. It's by Thierry de Paulus, who you've heard me talk about on my channel before, one of the really well-known tarot historians, and of course Stuart Kaplan was behind it. But a lot of the tarot history is written by Thierry in this book, and it's really a lot of information. There seems to be some things that have changed since then. We've learned new information. I don't want to say Thierry was wrong about it, but it was just the understanding of things back in these days were wrong. We've learned some things since then, and it's fairly recent. And this was pointed out to me by Ross as well. So this deck used to be affiliated with both Visconti and Sforza. The Visconti Viper, the Dove, the Motto, a Bondroit, which is all throughout the deck, the Ducal Crown, the Sunburst, the Imperial Eagle. They were all Visconti emblems. They thought that, I believe in the long suits, you had fountains and what they thought were quinces. That has since been, it appears to be been contradicted by Gabriel Reiner, who did a doctoral thesis on the heraldry of the Visconti decks, and they've concluded that there is no Sforza heraldry in this deck. It's completely Visconti. And they weren't quinces. They were actually, I think, called medlars, M-E-D-L-A-R-S. I'm going to leave a whole bunch of stuff about that below, so please check all the links down below. There is one discussion on tarot history, which is really kind of relevant, but basically everybody agrees on this now. This deck is 100% Visconti, not Sforza. Aside from the Lover's card, I think there's like a coat of arms on the Lover's card, which I think they think could possibly be Savoy. But I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm not going to get too much into that. I will mention it when I get there. But so other than that, this book is really great in terms of understanding the history of tarot and so forth. And theory is just awesome. So the booklet, I mean, is like a 5 out of 5 for me, aside from the changing information, which you're going to have, I mean, in older history books, because things are constantly changing. Now, in terms of the theological virtues, what Kaplan decided to do was, rather than having 22 trumps plus 3 additional virtues, because there's really no way to know for sure which cards were missing, what Kaplan did was he replaced the Papess with Charity, Hope with the Star, and Faith with the Pope. So he's incorporated the 3 virtues into the majors. This deck by Lo Scarabeo, and also the art, so the missing cards were drawn up by Luigi Scalpini, who also did the medieval Scalpini deck, and very well-known artist. The Visconti Di Modrone by Lo Scarabeo is from 2019. It was restored by Mattia De Olga. So De Olga has done some mock cards in an educated way to kind of come up using other Visconti decks to replace the missing cards, to make them usable, But they've taken 2 different positions. So Kaplan has incorporated the virtues in the trumps. De Olga has replaced all 22 of the standard trumps that we know, plus added 3 additional that has included the additional virtues. And that's the position there. It's kind of a position on the order of trumps. So, and Ross really makes a great point in his review, and he says basically it's very obvious with the male and female counterparts to the pages and the knights, plus the 3 theological virtues, seem to complement the 3 cardinal virtues of strength, fortitude, and temperance, in the deck. So it looks like it was an attempt to balance the deck out, and that's where the cards. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. Of course, there's not a way to really know for sure, but I like the approach taken here in that you have all the standard trumps plus the 3 virtues. So it makes a really well-balanced deck. And Ross argues that this was Visconti, Filippo Maria Visconti, who personally, sort of wanted to rebalance the deck, adding the female counterparts to the page and knight, and then the 3 virtues. And that's really interesting. So this is really a beautiful version. This box here is, I got to tell you, is really, really beautiful. So, with this, it's kind of nice because you can go either way. It kind of gives you the options with the missing trumps. So you have the standards plus you have the 3 virtues, and it makes it really interesting anyway. In terms of the art style, it's really, really very different. For one, there were a lot of things that they didn't know back in '84 about color and so forth that they've since learned about. But both decks are really, really important, I think, for me in my collection. But I think in terms of like beauty, it's hard to match the Lo Scarabeo. It really is, because they use all gold foil and real silver foil, which is just absolutely beautiful. Now, starting the first card here is the Magician. It's obviously missing because you have the 2 different magicians, but it's very similar in like symbolism. You have the same kind of feathers up top, and it's just the position of the stick, the inclusion of the dog, things like that. But it's really kind of cool, And then again, the Magician. And the Magician here kind of reminds me of the medieval Scalpini. That's not a deck I have, but I've seen it many times. And you see something similar in the medieval Scalpini with that hat and everything. And then a totally different sort of Magician here with a child, So, like I said, this is 2 vastly different decks in a lot of ways. Now, like I said, we have the Papes here. Really, really beautiful with all the gold foil and everything, sort of a traditional looking Papes. But now we have Charity here, which is an original card, and what it does is it replaces the Papes, So I'm going to put that aside because we're going to look at this in conjunction with the others. But so now we have the Empress. I think is the first sort of original of the standard trumps that we have. And you can tell because they're the same, So only the cards that were missing have been sort of elaborated on, but different style, kind of beauty. The gold foil really makes this version really special. They're also different in terms of size too. Like the Lo Scarabeo is smaller. I don't know which one is closer to the original size. I want to say the Lo Scarabeo, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So the Emperor was there, And now instead of the Pope, we have Faith here. So you have a woman like with a cross, and then this kingly figure down below her feet. And in the book, it actually describes this being like, an object of vice or something. The king is below her feet, something like that. But you have the Pope here. Okay, so now we have the Lover's card, and this is like a highly discussed card. And the reason is because, now, I don't know if I mentioned, and this is really important, but it's dated to 1441 to 42. I think I did mention that. But originally, I think there was a fellow named Chiganera who did a historical study in 1831. It was like the first time this deck was written about. Said that it was the wedding of Mary of Savoy and Francesco Sforza. Not Francesco, Duke Filippo Maria Visconti and Mary of Savoy, okay? Because there's a Savoy coat of arms here somewhere, supposedly, I think with the cross, and then the Visconti viper, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, so there's just no way of knowing like exactly who this depicts, and I'm not going to really speculate on that. There are different theories, but 1428 I think was the original date, which we now think it's 1441, which is around the time that Francesco Sforza, the son of, Bianca Visconti marries Francesco Sforza around like 1441 or 42, the same time this deck dates, but there's no evidence that this was a wedding gift. You know, this is what Ross says. You know, it could be because the timeline sort of adds up, but there's just no way of knowing. The reason people have it in their head that it's a wedding gift is because initially Chiganera had said in the 1800s that it was a wedding gift for the wedding of, Visconti and Mary of Savoy. You know, I know that's probably a little confusing, but so they've used this card to sort of date the deck many times, and but it's very beautiful. And you have a Moor here, which is sort of faded in this version, and then the gold foil again just makes it really beautiful. But I just thought I'd mention that. I'm not going to take any conclusions on that, but I am going to go with the date of 1441 and 42 because, you know, everybody seems to agree on that now. You know, for the most part, not everybody, but you know, the people I look to. I'll get myself in trouble saying that. So here we have the Chariot. You know, and it's of course an original included in the deck. Justice is different. You can see, I mean, two different, but you know, very similar style. You know, in the same kind of, a lot of similarities. It's not really that much difference. If you look at these, and you can kind of understand that they were educated guesses on what the cards would have looked like. You know, they've used other decks, other Visconti decks, and so forth, and they've, you know, and the same thing here. So you have the Hermit or Father Time with the hourglass, and you know, they're walking the same way, just different details, different face, and so forth. So one downside is that people will use this deck and they won't realize that, you know, a lot of these cards are not originals. Like, this is not an original card. It looks very close to being an original, but it's not. You know, you can see they're both different in these decks. And you'll see somebody post a picture online or something of this and think that it's, you know, an original card painted by the artist. You know, but it's not. It's a mock. This is by Scalpini, and this one is Dioghi. In terms of the artist who painted this, and I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but it was formerly thought that Bonafacio Bembo did this, the art in this deck, but actually now for this specific deck, they're thinking that it's Andrea Bembo, Bonafacio's older brother. This is what art historians are feeling now because of the style of the art and so forth. And that's something I just kind of take their word on it because I don't really know. You know what I mean? It's not something that I can really have an opinion on yet because I'm still studying and learning about this, the iconography and stuff. So, okay, so now we have the Hangman here, which was also missing. I really like this Hangman here with the hook for some reason. Very, very beautiful card. The Death card is one of the originals. And in this Lo Scarabeo version, I mean, everything is so clear and is easy to see. So it's just beautiful. Okay, so Temperance again, that's one of the mock cards. This kind of comparison is great because it will give you an idea of which cards were replaced and which weren't just by looking at both decks in comparison. You know what I mean? It's hard to know when you're just looking at one or the other. Okay, so now the Devil. There's an interesting article by Mary Greer on the missing Devil cards. I'll try and link that below if I remember. But they're missing from all of the 15th century hand-painted decks. You know, the Devil card is one of those cards that just comes up missing. Some people thought that it was stolen for magic ceremonies. Other people have just suggested, hey, it's just not an image people wanted in their house, you know, so they've discarded it because they didn't want the image of the devil in their house. It was bad luck or whatever. Out of the two, I tend to favor Kaplan's, I think, because I just like the feet. It's more kind of historic. Looks more like Bolognese or like, you know, like something like the Findalator or something like that, you know. Like, I just like those feet. And even the same feet in the devil, I think, in some of the early French decks, like the Viville, you know, has those feet, and, as opposed to the hoof, you know, which is almost like pan, like the pan kind of thing. But cool, both cool nonetheless. And another reason I kind of like both decks, because they have their own personalities, despite being historic decks, you know. Okay, so now we have the tower, and it's very, very different. I mean, same idea. People falling, very historic, but here we have that figure down below, the king. And the gold foil and the silver foil just make it really beautiful. Okay, so now what's Kaplan has done again with the, this is hope, the theological virtue. He's replaced the star, whereas the Augie has included the standard star, you know. So I'm going to put this hope down below here, and okay, and so now we have the moon, beautiful moon, but both very different. Sorry about that, I'm bumping the camera around here. And two different suns, both very beautiful. Again, so these are, it's like you have two different decks here, but I mean, in terms of the history, you have to know the originals versus not. It's nice to have the mock cards, but do yourself a favor and just become accustomed to which is, you know, which decks are the original, which cards are the original and which aren't. This way, you know, you're not sharing images that are not original, you know, without saying that they are. So again, here's Judgment, Scene of Judgment, and very, very beautiful. Not sure what that says up top, but. And we have the World, which is really beautiful. Wow. I mean, what a beautiful World card. So there's been some speculation about the World card, and that it was the fourth cardinal virtue of prudence. And I think it comes from the Charles VI deck. I don't know too much about that, but I do know that when I asked Ross about that, he didn't seem to agree with that. He seemed to think that, you know, it just doesn't fit in with it because, you know, for whatever reason, I think it had something to do with a halo in the Charles VI that exists in the Charles VI deck but doesn't exist anywhere else. But the existence of the three theological virtues, they coincide with the three of the cardinal virtues, and that kind of makes a lot of sense, you know, and they're mirrored, you know what I mean? And to me, that just made a lot of sense. So, okay, so now here we are. Speaking of the theological virtues, we have the first. This is hope, not in any particular order. But faith and charity. I believe I got that right. Let's hope. If I didn't, I'm sure somebody will be there to tell me I wasn't. But really beautiful. I mean, I just love these images. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the pips, and I'm going to show you all the pips, which is something I don't normally do because it can be a bit redundant, but these are beautiful, beautiful cards, and I want you to get a full kind of picture of the difference between the two. But we're going to go kind of fast here. So this is the cup suit. And I hope you can see the foil here. I hope there's no like issue with lights or anything. Okay, so again, you know, this has female pages and male pages, female knights and male knights, so you're going to see that here. But also, within the court cards, there's these little symbols. So here you have a crown. This is a well-known Visconti emblem, according to the book. It used to be thought Again, and I'm being redundant here, but it was thought that there were some sports emblems in here, but there aren't. And they're mostly existing in the core cards, like the sun, for instance, and then the crown here. I mean, the colors look really great in this. What a nice job. Okay, so that was the male and female page, and then we have the female knight here. So all throughout the cup suit, you have that little crown kind of everywhere. That is unbelievably beautiful. Here we have the queen and the king. Okay, so now we have the pentacles, and you have that Visconti image of the viper on the pentacles, all in silver foil, which is just phenomenal. I mean, so beautiful. Such a high quality deck. And look at those coins, how pretty they are. Wow. They look like real coins to me. It's unbelievable. So pretty. Okay, and so we have the female page of coin. Oh, a bon droit, I think is the saying, which is a slogan, which means with good right. See, a bon droit, which was the family motto of the Visconti. Okay, that's the king. Okay, so now we're at the suit of arrows. Basically, it's like staves. You know, the staves here, where the batons have arrows. You know, I think. Oh no, it's not this one, but the silver foil just looks so pretty, and the color of the feathers. Such a unique deck. I mean, you could absolutely use this for divination games. You know, if you're not comfortable with the pages, you can pick between one or the other, and the knights. You know, you can pick one or the other, balance it out that way, or you can include them. I would be tempted to leave both in there. You know. Okay, so here we have a female page, male page. Female knight, male knight, and you can see the different ones because they're not the same here. So, and a female king. I mean the female king, which would be a queen, and the male king. And finally, we have the suit of swords. Really pretty. I thought I saw somewhere a bon droit in one of these ribbons, but I must be mistaken. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pips. Well, okay, yeah, so here's the so-called quinces, but they're not. They're medlars, you know, and it's totally Visconti. And again, definitely check out the tarot history forum about the Visconti heraldry in this deck. It's really interesting, and you know, there's a lot of information down there, as well as some other information I'm going to leave. And please leave your comments below. Your opinions are valued, and I appreciate you watching as always. Until next time, my friends, love and peace. Bye-bye.